I was heading to my car in the garage. When he came into my view, I was so startled that I let out a loud cry. What the hell? Food scraps were strewn all over the car. They were even thrown inside. A waft of stench hurt my nose from the humidity when I opened the car door. I covered my nose and mouth with my hands. That's what you deserved. With the voice, my mother-in-law appeared from the shadow like in the horror movie. She had been jealous of me buying a new car for a while, so I quickly understood this horrible act. I closed the door and moved away from the car in desperation. I knew she was planning to harass me in some way, but I never thought to this extent. But this is Joe's boss car. No! She committed the fiasco as an attempt to harass me. I couldn't help but think to myself, what an idiot. I'm Maria, a 28-year-old working wife. I currently live with my husband as well as my parents-in-law. My job is an admin assistant at a real estate agency, but in truth, I once dreamed of being a piano teacher. I had no choice but to give up, because it required early childhood education in order to join the company I wanted to. After failing to get into my first choice of music school, I went to a university which offered only general music, vocal performance majors. I got a job at my current company as an office worker after graduation and met my husband Tim, who was 2 years older than me at work. When we got married after 2 years of dating, I changed from full-time to part-time. We bought a brand new house initially thinking the two of us would live alone. But before we had time to enjoy our newlyweds life, my in-laws moved in. My parents want to move in with us because their house is getting old. That's okay for you, right? What? He suggested as a matter of course. I was too astounded to make a protest. Why so suddenly? He responded nonchalantly to the question that finally came out of my mouth. I told you, their house is old. It's gonna cost a lot of money to renovate, so it's better for them to just move in with us. They can take half of our mortgage payments too. It's a win-win situation. Don't make such a big decision by yourself. We didn't buy this house with that intention. It's too small. You, my dad, and I work, so we probably can renovate or rebuild a house in a few years. That wasn't my point. He didn't even ask me. And just because their house was old, they brazenly planned to move in. I wasn't happy about it at all, but he just shrugged it off. Joe, my father-in-law, still worked, but of course he wasn't that young. By the time we upgraded the house, he was going to be around retirement age. Then the burden of the cost wouldn't have fallen on us. We just bought a new house, but we are already talking about upgrading? I was against the idea to the end, but I was completely ignored, and my in-laws moved in as a matter of course. The four of us began to live together. At first, my in-laws showed her gratitude and humble sides, but soon they made themselves comfortable. Before I knew it, the responsibility of the housework was put on my shoulders even though I had a job. Neither Tim or Joe helped me at all, thinking it was normal that I, who worked part-time, should do it and not they, who worked full-time. Nancy, my mother-in-law, said she hurt her back and didn't even help me in the kitchen. Furthermore, she started harassing me on the grounds of jealous, and I had an income and savings compared to herself. She used various tactics to cause me headaches. For example, she purposely placed a glass with a drink on the edge of a coffee table while I was vacuuming. She waited for me to move or bump into it and knock the glass over. Then, when I was caught in her trap and the drink spilled all over the place, She gave me a disapproving look with a smirk. Oops, my bad. I put it on the age. Isn't serving drinks to your boss a part of your job? Then you must be used to cleaning up spills. Hurry, it's gonna stain the rug. She just watched and laughed at me as I rushed to get a rug and wiped. At those times, I got frustrated that I yelled at her harshly. I told you so many times before not to put it on the edge. Oh my God, are you blaming me? You're terrible. You did it, not me. You purposely put it there for me to knock it over. How dare you? She suddenly menaced at me and started ranting. You falsely accused me for your mistake. That's insulting. It's terrible to blame others. You point finger at me when it's your own fault for being clumsy. Stop playing the victim. You can't even do anything right to begin with. I wonder how you're holding your job. I envy that your office is so patient with you. If I were your boss, I would have fired an useless employee like you immediately. You can't cook, can't clean, and can't even wash clothes properly. It was just so wrong for her to say such things to me when she didn't work and didn't do her chores but just sat around at home all day long. I felt ridiculous to deal with her, so I told him that night instead. But he just shrugged off my distress signal. I'm not sure that's true. I doubt that she's the kind of person to do such a thing. But it happened more than once. She keeps doing the same thing over and over. And she doesn't even help me with any housework. She just eats snacks and spills crumbs all over the place when I'm cleaning. Don't make a fuss about the trivia thing. She's still in pain from her back injury. I'm sure she wants to eat snacks time to time too. How can you tell her she's not allowed to do that? Put yourself in her shoes for a minute. You of all people should try to put yourself in my shoes. Even thought I pleaded almost in tears, he was unaffected. Joe, too, must have been aware of what Nancy was doing to me, but he chose to turn a blind eye. Even when I was right next to him, being harassed by Nancy, he never intervened. It became too depressing to stay at home, so I got my chores done early in the morning when no one else was awake on my days off. I stayed out during the day and refreshed my mind by playing the piano that was placed for anyone to play in town. As I played, people gathered around me and even applauded at the end. I always felt reinvigorated then. On one of my days off, when I finished playing and stood up to leave, an old man came up to me. You sound excellent. Oh, thank you so much. I must have sounded a bit alarmed, so he continued to excuse his approach. I'm sorry to bother you. I'm actually a colleague of your father-in-law. Well, more like his boss. I've seen pictures of you from the wedding. I just thought I should introduce myself. Oh, I see. Perhaps I should have acted a little friendlier, but I couldn't bring myself to be more enthusiastic to introduce myself. To be honest, I wasn't keen to make any acquaintances with the man who worked with Joe. Joe not only ignored Nancy's abuse to me, but he let me to do all the chores, and had not even given me a single word of encouragement when I was exhausted. But the man didn't seem to mind and spoke nicely to me. I'm actually have seen you play here often. May I be bold to ask you a favor? I would like you to teach me how to play the piano. What? I exclaimed at his indeed a bold and sudden request. The man's name was Mr. Miles. He had been interested in playing piano, and since his retirement was approaching, he wanted to start practicing as a hobby. But he couldn't find a suitable piano teacher or class for seniors. When he was about to give up his quest, he found me there. Of course, I will pay the fee. Oh, but you'll be doing me the favor and making time for me, so you will certainly be paid. But I'm not sure what Joe will say. I'll speak to him myself, so don't worry about him. But it's still a nuisance, isn't it? Then I don't mean to force you. No, I would love to, I said in a hurry. The fact that if my in-laws heard about me refusing him, I didn't know what kind of harassment they were going to give me. But more than that, I was quite excited about it. I thought it was a unique opportunity to teach piano, which was my childhood dream. From then on, I gave lessons to Mr. Miles every Saturday and Sunday at a studio where we rented for vacation. I felt bad about it as he was paying me on top of the rental fee, but he didn't seem to mind it at all. It's all for my enjoyment anyway. I look forward to the practice. Since he had been interested in playing, he sounded quite good for the first time. And the more I taught him, the more he improved, and the happier I was. Soon I began to look forward to the weekend. Joe heard about the practice from Mr. Miles, and his attitude toward me had softened a little. When he saw me preparing meals as soon as I got home from work, he began to say, "Thank you for doing that." That alone was a relief. After about 6 months, I was able to save money through my part-time job and piano lessons. So I decided to take a plunge and buy the car. The car I had been using with Tim became unavailable when my in-laws moved in. Nancy always had a priority when she went out because she was too lazy to walk, but I had to take a bus and walk with big grocery bags in both hands. I had been wanting my own car that I could use for day to day. When I finally bought it, Nancy complained a lot to me. "You spend your disposable income only on yourself. If you had so much money to buy the car, you could have spared some for us. You really don't care about us, do you? What a self-centered daughter-in-law." Ever since she moved in, she'd been living in comfort, doing nothing thanks to me. Who was more self-centered? As much as I wanted to argue, I learned to ignore her to save my energy. By this time, I had come to realize that the more I talked back, the more aggressive she became. Soon after this, she dumped raw garbage all over the car. When I told her it was Joe's boss car, she just screamed at me, "Don't lie to me." It was a fact no matter what she said. The car I bought had a problem right after and was taken by the dealer for inspection. When I told Mr. Miles about it, he offered to lend me his car. "But don't you need it too?" "Not really. I don't like driving so much." "So nice of you, but..." I contemplated. I was afraid Nancy was going to damage his car. I had been alarmed based on the past harassments and the reaction I got when I made the purchase. When I confided this to Mr. Miles, he looked really stunned. "I'm sorry that you've been going through such terrible ordeals." Then he gave me a warm smile and continued, "Well, you should take my car more than before now. Even if she did something to you, you wouldn't be in trouble. Moreover, I'll have a reason to scold at Joe." That was how I came to borrow his car. Nancy made a mess the day after he arrived. She was swelling not to lie to her. Hearing the commotion, Tim and Joe came to the garage. "What's going on?" As soon as he spoke, he noticed the car and froze there. This is Mr. Miles' car. What the hell happened to it?" "Oh my God, Mr. Miles is your boss, isn't it? Why is his car in our garage in the first place?" I answered to him, Joe knows, but I've been giving piano lessons to Mr. Miles every weekend. He was kind enough to let me borrow his car while mine was away for inspection. Nancy was looking like a ghost. Tim and Joe had never imagined that she was the culprit and were both panicking. How did this happen? Did Raccoon come inside? Anyway, we need to clean. I raised my voice and cut him short. Nancy did this. I saw her doing it. The three of them looked at me in bewilderment. How dare you blame me? She shrieked. You're a liar. How could I do such a terrible thing? She's right. I've been taking things easy on you because of Mr. Miles. But I can't allow you to say anything that would undermine my wife. Joe sternly took her side. Tim also nodded in agreement with him and didn't even try to help me. But I had a trick up my sleeve. Well then, let's find out. I've set up a surveillance camera. We can check and easily find out who is responsible. Again, the three of them were surprised. The one who expressed the biggest shock, to the point that her eyeballs were about to fall out, was Nancy. For what? There's been a lot of misdemeanor going on around here lately. I just bought a new car myself, and I was worried that it might be damaged. In truth, it was the measure against Nancy's harassment. I wanted to have proof in case something happened to my car. Then, let's see now. Joe, who seemed to believe Nancy completely, was so determined to find out who was responsible. Tim agreed. Let's do it. But of course Nancy was not keen on it. Wait, we should clean this up first. You're right, that's cleaning up. The recording won't disappear anyway, but probably we can't get rid of all the stains and smells even if we clean it now. Joe gave me a stern look and said, How can you be so calm? You rented his car, so it's your responsibility. You brought shame on me. I'm telling you, it's Nancy who did this. Enough with your false accusation. Let's check the recording now. If you're wrong, you know there'll be a consequence. He made a treat, but as soon as he saw the recording, his demeanor changed completely and turned pale. Nancy, what have you done? He asked her in a trembling voice, as if he were suppressing his anger. She responded in despair. It's not what you think. I didn't do it on purpose. You know, I'm not capable of doing such a thing. It was an accident. She stammered, and Joe grimaced at her. You're caught on the camera. You were trying to friend me by damaging my boss' car. That's not true. So why did you do it? If Mr. Miles disfavored me, I don't know what will happen to my career. You know it, and yet you did it. No, you're wrong. I never want to trouble you. I did thinking it was Maria's car. She was so upset by Joe's accusation that she dug her own grave with all her might. An awkward silence fell in the garage. You were going to do such an atrocity to me. I broke the silence, pretending to be naive. Afterwards, Joe frantically apologized to Mr. Miles. Apparently, he was severely scolded. Mr. Miles told me all about it. I told him that his wife was the culprit in this case. But it's not irrelevant to say that he's been turning blind eye to her abuse on you. He was as much responsible as her. And then Joe was given a demotion. I was stunned to find out he had such an authority. He wasn't just a boss of Joe, but was actually a member of the higher management. I told him that I didn't feel safe living under the same roof with Nancy and asked for a divorce. I was fortunate that I had the financial resources to take the plunge right away. I wondered myself why I put up with all this time. Tim tried to resist with all his might, but the surveillance video alone was sufficient grounds for divorce and for alimony. Joe, who was demoted, and Tim, who was divorced all because of Nancy, were pissed off. I heard they treated her with spite, and sometimes they fought all night long. As for me, I'm really refreshed to be single now. In addition, I went on to open my own private piano school using the experience from teaching Mr. Miles. I'm so fortunate to have had him as my student. Moreover, he is very satisfied with my lesson that he brings other people to the class. Piano classes are a huge success for seniors. I'm finally living a fulfilled life.
My name is Christine, a 41-year-old housewife. I met my husband Mark at work, and we got married. After 5 years of marriage, we finally had our son, Jake, who is now 5 years old. He's so cute at this age. I would love to spend all day with him if I could, but our financial situation doesn't allow me to do so. I have to leave my son at a daycare center and work in order to help with our income. Mommy, I want an omelette tomorrow. A request from my adorable son. How could I not give him what he wants? Maybe Jake understands my busy schedule because he never requests a difficult meal. But it's probably just because I'm not a good cook. Elaborate dishes. But I honestly think omelets are pretty difficult to make. To be able to make them fluffy and perfect is truly a skill. But never mind that. I'm just making excuses for myself now. Mark was very happy when Jake was first born. He was, after all, our miracle after so many years of trying. We were a very close family, going on drives and outing to the park every weekend. But our family dynamics slowly started to change after Jake turned 3 years old. When Jake finally grew out of his terrible threes phase, Mark started coming home late more frequently. Even from before, he had been complaining about how he couldn't deal with Jake's fussy phase. Maybe that's why he was coming home late so often. Whenever he called to tell me that he was working overnight, I couldn't help but sigh and feel disappointed. The truth was, he was playing slot machines, killing time at a restaurant, at the cinema, and such. I know this because Mark's colleague told me. Since we met at work, his colleagues are also my ex-colleagues. I resigned after we got married and started working a part-time job, but I still keep in touch with my former colleagues. Obviously, Mark knows all of this. How can he think I won't find out? Part of me is bothered by all of this, but I would rather have Mark come home late than have to watch him be annoyed by Jake's fussiness. Because I never said anything, he started coming home even later and later. Sometimes even in the morning. Who does he think he is? Sometimes I could smell sweet perfume on his suit. It doesn't make me feel good. Of course, I feel angry at times. But Mark was a decent father when Jake wasn't being fussy, so I was able to turn a blind eye to his behavior. 2 years has passed since then. Jake has grown into an energetic and cheeky 5-year-old. I'm so in awe of Jake's growth. And at the same time, I am so fed up by Mark's bad attitude. Oh no! You spilled a bit of tea, sweetie. Wait here while I go get a cloth. What is wrong with you? You're 5-year-old now and still can't hold a cup properly? Mark gets annoyed and starts to yell whenever I try to deal with Jake's mistakes. Daddy, play with me. I'm busy. Don't bother me. Mark yells and refuses to play with Jake. Hey, about tonight's dinner? I don't need dinner. How can I peacefully eat dinner in such a chaotic environment? I don't even feel like eating your horribly cooked food. I'm eating out. Mark gets angry at anything I say. We should go somewhere on your next day off. Are you serious? I'm tired from work. Let me rest on my day off. No matter what I say, he just yells at me. We just can't seem to have a proper conversation. Is Mark still stuck in his fussy phase? He should have grown out of it 40 years ago. I once asked him why he was so angry all the time. And he got angry, as always, and said, "It's because you are useless, obviously. And you're passing that gene on to Jake." I wish he turned out more like me. What a horrible thing to say. Jake is both of ours. At least he has a handsome face like me. He was basically saying that all of Jake's good qualities are from him, until the bad qualities are from me. I just couldn't believe his audacity. My frustration with Mark continued to grow. His words and actions were causing me a lot of emotional pain. I was considering divorcing him too. He was one strike away from ending our marriage because of his behavior and lack of respect for our family. Yet, I stayed because I still had love for my husband. Even though Jake was scared of Mark, he still loved him too. I was so tired of being with my husband who was hardly ever in a good mood. But I didn't have the courage to break up our family. One day, my husband brought up something. What? A trip? Yes, with some colleagues from work. You know them, don't you? The ones I'm close to. Oh, the two guys who were enjoying their single life? Yeah, them. They're going on a trip together, so I decided to join them. Seriously? What's wrong with that? I've been patient for a long time. This family takes up all my time. I never had time for myself. And you spend all of the money I earn on useless luxuries. I have the right to relax once in a while. I am not spending any money on luxuries. We live so frugally since you only give me the bare minimum amount of money. This was the truth. I leave Jake at daycare and work. But the harder I work, and the more money I make, the less money Mark puts into our family. I actually put more into it than him, while he is probably playing around and spending whatever he has left. Otherwise, there is no way he could afford to pay for this trip. Shut up. I'm going away for a week from tomorrow, whether you like it or not. And you better not complain. Tomorrow? I was surprised about the trip in general, but was even more surprised that it was from tomorrow. I could feel my blood start to boil. I was about to argue back when I heard, "Mommy!" Jake, who was supposed to be sleeping, had woken up. I ran to him, flustered. "I'm sorry, Jake. Did I wake you up? Come on, let's go back to your room so Mommy can sleep with you." But the moment I touched his body to put him to sleep, I knew something was wrong. "Jake, your body is so hot." "Mommy, my head hurts." "Jake?" I looked at Jake's face, and the next moment, his eyes had rolled up and he collapsed. Panicked, I called an ambulance. Mark, who I naturally thought would accompany me, refused to come with us. There were so many things I wanted to say, but time was of the essence. I had no choice but to get into the ambulance alone. Thankfully, the test results showed that it was not a serious illness, but Jake was admitted to the hospital for more tests just in case. I called Mark to give him updates. What do you want? I can tell he's extremely annoyed, but I don't have time to worry about it. I explained to him what had happened and asked him to bring a change of clothes for the hospital stay. Are you joking? That was his response. He continued, I can't make it. What? I said I can't make it. I don't want to be late for tomorrow's trip. So, I'm going to stay at my colleague's tonight. Are you serious? Your son is in the hospital, and you're still going on a trip? Of course I am. He doesn't need me there for a simple checkup. Jake is suffering from high fever. So? There's nothing I can do. Yes, there is. I asked you to... Oh, I have to go. I'll make sure to buy you a souvenir. No, wait. He hung up. Mark one-sidedly ended the conversation and hung up on me. I called him again, but it went to his voicemail immediately. You son of a bitch. You turned off your phone. Unfortunately, I didn't have his colleague's phone number. What an asshole! My anger echoed through the hospital. In the end, I called my parents and asked them to help me. I thought about Mark's behavior. He abandoned his son in the hospital. That's 2 strikes. The 3rd strike is just around the corner. I could feel it. 3 days later, the tests are over, and Jake is back to his usual energetic self. The results showed no problems, and he would be discharged from the hospital tomorrow. I planned to buy some pudding for him. I got up and turned my cell phone to check my messages. That's when it happened. My cell phone suddenly started vibrating. I almost dropped it, but I grabbed it in time to see that I was getting a call from a former colleague, Cindy. Hello? My former colleague's voice sounded panicked. Christine, where are you? Huh? I'm at the hospital. Never mind that. It's an emergency. Apparently, your husband died in an accident. I didn't know what she was talking about. Without thinking, I replied, What? This is a joke, right? But I continued to hear her voice on the other end of the phone, and I ran out in a panic. My husband had passed away. That fact alone was shocking. But my colleague continued. Apparently, Mark was on a trip alone with a woman, and the woman ran into the oncoming lane while driving and hit a tree. There had to be a misunderstanding. Mark was supposed to be traveling with his male colleagues. There was no way he was alone with a woman. There was no way he could have been killed in a car accident with the woman. It's not possible. It's not possible. In a panic, I called my parents and asked them to look after Jake. I rushed to the hospital where my husband was admitted. In the midst of my panic, I suddenly wondered why they called the company before me. Anyway, it seemed like it wasn't a lie, so I had to hurry. According to my former colleague, the men who were supposed to be with my husband were safe. Obviously, that's because they weren't together. Mark didn't even bother briefing them about his made-up alibi. He was with another woman. That's 3 strikes. 3 strikes and you're out. I wondered if he really died. I needed to verify the facts of the situation. Honey! I rattled open the hospital room. There was only one person in the room, and it was undoubtedly Mark. The bandages wrapped around his hands and feet looked painful, but his chest was moving up and down. He was breathing. It seems like Cindy's information that he had passed away was wrong. Mark was alive. You're alive, I murmured, moving closer to him. When I looked at his face, I could see that his eyes were slightly open. It could have been my imagination, but he seemed a little shaken. Maybe he didn't think the company would contact me right away. My husband spat out in his usual grumpy tone.
Took you long enough. Your husband's been in an accident, and it takes you ages to get here. You useless piece of shit.
Well, good to see he is still his usual self. He looks pretty battered. But it seems he only broke his left hand and right leg. Apparently, the rental car was a wreck though. What a lucky guy. I'm glad you're okay, I tell him. To which he replies,
You better take good care of me.
Huh, he's definitely feeling fine. Good to know. Well, let's get to it, shall we? You may have escaped death, but you don't get a pass on 3 strikes. I took out a sheet of paper. When I say I'm glad you're okay, I'm talking about your right hand. If you had broken your right hand, you wouldn't be able to hold a pen to sign this.
What are you talking about?
I unfolded the paper in front of a very confused Mark.
Huh? What? Divorce papers?
Yes, I was preparing it, which is why I got here late. I know you're injured, so I'll just leave it here. Make sure you sign it.
You must be joking. Why would I sign this?
Well, you told your girlfriend you were getting a divorce, didn't you? The reason you came home late every night was because you were with her. Was this trip a prenuptial trip too? Good for you. Now you can marry your sweet Michelle.
How do you even know her name?
Because I spoke to her, obviously. In fact, before coming to Mark's hospital room, I stopped by the woman he was with room. She was also in the same hospital. I asked for the woman who was in a car accident and immediately found her. She had broken some bones as well, but she seemed better off than Mark. Her parents were also in the hospital room. I asked her to tell me everything. I couldn't tell her I was going to see Mark after this, so I had to talk to her without yet knowing whether he was dead or alive. But it became clear that he was alive. Even with her parents bombarding her with questions, she glared at me and said, "Let him go." I don't know what she sees in you. You are cold to your wife and kids. You don't pay your bills. You go out every night. You don't care when your kid is in the hospital. And the cheating. It's game over. My husband's face instantly turned pale. I had expected him to become defensive, but that didn't change my decision.
No. She's just for fun, you know. You're the only one I love.
Just stop. Here you go. I've filled out the form with my part. Even if you tear it up, I've got plenty of spares. In fact, why don't I just call a lawyer?
A lawyer?
That's right. We need to figure out alimony and child support. So, I think that will be better.
No, wait a second.
What did you say?
I mean, please, reconsider.
as soon as I gave the death glare to Mark, who was still speaking in a pompous tone. He suddenly shriveled up.
I don't want a divorce.
Why not? He stuttered.
Because
Why don't I just say it for the both of us? I took a deep breath and said without stopping. Because I'm working and paying for everything. You can spend your money as you like. And I'm paid to play around with young women. If you have children, you can make them take care of you in the future. And you can sit back and enjoy life while your wife does all the dirty housework. A wife at home for the security. And a girlfriend to have fun with. What a great life. But if you divorce me, that would all disappear, wouldn't it? Mark's mouth hung open, not knowing what to say. Did he lose his voice or what? No response. Sorry to have to tell you that your perfect life plan is now ruined. You can make a new life plan with Michelle or whoever you like. But my son and I will not be part of it. Just pretend you died and have a new life. I said everything I wanted to say. I turned to leave the hospital room.
Wait!
I heard my husband's pathetic voice over my shoulder, but kept walking. In the coming days, I hired a lawyer and started divorce proceedings. The discussion included Michelle, who was discharged from the hospital. When Mark said he had no intention of divorcing me, Michelle became absolutely livid. They got into a huge fight when I brought up alimony payment. You've ruined my life.
I don't give a damn about a woman who hits on a married man.
You're the one who made a pass at me.
Shut up. I never did that.
I thought to myself, can you just hurry up and sign the papers? I watched the two of them argue in silence. No matter how much Mark resisted, the evidence was all there. In the end, our divorce was official. I got almost all the alimony payment that I wanted. Child support was to be paid in one lump sum. After all the discussions were over, my lawyer and I left the room. But Mark and Michelle were still arguing. I wondered what would happen to their relationship after this. Actually, I don't really care. I told them I hope you have a lovely life together before leaving the room, which might have been petty. I hope Jake doesn't take after my pettiness. Despite all that had happened, Jake and I had returned to a peaceful life. Jake, who no longer had to worry about Mark's mood, had become surprisingly cheerful. Seeing this, I regretted not getting a divorce earlier. Mark's attitude must have caused my son so much pain. It was the same for me. How could I have clung to such a horrible husband? Living with just the two of us, I realized something. We were perfectly fine without Mark. In fact, every day is a joy. With that being said, Mark is still Jake's one and only father. If he wants to see him, I will let him. I asked him, "Do you want to see Daddy?" "No, why?" he replied. After the divorce was finalized, I sent Mark an email after confirming that the alimony and child support payments had been made. He replied instantly with the subject title, "Help." I opened it, and the message was laughable. Apparently, my former colleague had spread the story about his cheating to the whole company. Mark, stressed from all the painful stares and gossip, kept making mistakes at work. As a result, he had to leave the company. My parents have cut me off, and I have nowhere to go. I can't live like this. Please help me. Can you believe it? So, being the kind-hearted person that I am, I replied, "Why don't you ask your sweet Michelle to help you?" And guess what he said?
I broke up with Michelle. Her parents cut her off too, and now she is missing. I can think clearly now. You are the only one that I love. You have to help me. Please,
Don't make me laugh.
his messages still continued. I'm behind on my cell phone bill, and it's going to stop working tomorrow. Please, come and pick me up right away.
I blocked him after that. We had long since moved, and Mark had no way of knowing where we were. As I put my phone on the table and sipped my tea, Jake came over and said, "What should we do on our day off tomorrow, Mommy?" I thought for a moment and said, "How about I pack us some lunch? And we can go to the aquarium." A big smile erupted from Jake's face. "Yay! I want to go to the dolphin show." Seeing my son so alive and excited, I couldn't help but smile.